We all know that the United States military is currently one of, if not the most powerful military. From its powerful Air Force dominating the battlefield with F-22s, A-10s, and B-2s, to its Navy consisting of 11 nuclear-powered aircraft carriers and many nuclear submarines, the United States military clearly dominates the military scene. However, some tend to ask the question of how the US became such a great military power in the first place. In today's video, we'll look at what key factors/wars made the US military the world's top military power. The United States in the 19th century was a developing country. Having gone through a civil war, reconstruction, and industrialization, the US had even bigger ambitions thanks to imperialism. In 1895, revolutionaries in Cuba enacted multiple insurrections in an attempt to overthrow Spanish rule and gain independence. Being in its own backyard, the US took an interest in wanting to support the Cubans and have them gain independence from Spain. By 1898, US and Spanish tensions were high, and due to the explosion of the USS Maine, a US Navy armored cruiser, it seemed that the US would go to war with the Spanish. And on April 24, 1898, Spain declared war with the US, and the US would do so the following day. The United States first took the Philippines, and on June 10th, they would land troops at Guantanamo Bay, beginning the campaign to take Cuba. A couple of months later, the US and Spanish governments signed a treaty guaranteeing Cuban independence and ceding Puerto Rico, Guam, and later the Philippines with money to the United States. With all these new territories acquired, US influence in the Pacific would show other countries that a new power was rising in the Western Hemisphere. When World War I erupted in Europe, the United States was very hesitant to join the war. For centuries, the United States' foreign policy has always been about isolationism, meaning that they wouldn't be involved in anything to do with Europe politically. However, the German policy of unrestricted submarine warfare led to the sinking of the RMS Lusitania, causing the death of 128 American lives. With the Zimmermann Telegraph as well, the United States eventually joined the war on the Entente side on April 4, 1917. With fresh new soldiers being shipped towards Western Europe, the war tipped incredibly in favor of the Triple Entente, and at the battles of Hamel and Chateau Thierry in 1918, the American soldiers were able to show their might by defeating the Germans there both times. The war would end later that year on November 11th, and during the writing of the Treaty of Versailles, President Wilson's 14 points would be a major factor in determining the terms for Germany after the war, thus beginning the United States' climb to a world power. Moving on to the Second World War, the United States was mainly neutral during the beginning years of the war. Public opinion of the war was just not that popular, and having come out of the Great Depression years earlier, the United States did not seem ready for World War II. However, when Imperial Japan launched the aerial raid over Pearl Harbor, the United States had to take action and declared war on Japan. Because of the Tripartite Pact, Nazi Germany also declared war on the US, meaning US troops would be fighting in the Pacific and Europe. America was still yet a big world power, but because of factors like the Lend-Lease Act, the US quickly became the world's #1 economy. Combined with the American people's morale, equipment and soldiers were pouring out onto the battlefields quickly. By the war's end, the United States had become an experienced military with great technology, most notably the atomic bombs. When the war in Europe had been won, Truman and Churchill noticed that the Soviet Union had been occupying countries rather than liberating them. So in a show of power and other reasons, Truman ordered the dropping of 2 atom bombs on Japan, showing the military capability of the United States to the whole world. Next, the United States invasion of Panama, codenamed Operation Just Cause, was commenced under George H.W. Bush in an attempt to topple the dictator Manuel Noriega for drug trafficking. Beginning on December 20th, 1989, it would be the largest combat operation since the Vietnam War, having nearly 26,000 US soldiers being deployed to quell the Panama Defense Force. With careful planning designed to destroy the enemy rapidly and intense training which included close quarters combat and such by the US, they would quickly overwhelm the PDF, resulting in a complete victory by January 12, 1990, less than a month before the operation had begun. Noriega would later be deposed and replaced with elected President Guillermo Endara, officially ending the war with Panama. Due to the efficiency and speed of the operation, it is generally considered as a military success. However, protests would later arise by angry civilians after thousands had lost their homes due to the intense battle in their cities. Operation Just Cuz demonstrated that the US military was still the best at doing their jobs and was not to be messed with. However, months later, this would be put to the test with a certain man named Saddam Hussein. In 1980, Iraq, led by Saddam Hussein, was worried that insurgency movements in Iran would inspire those in Iraq to do the same. With the fact that Saddam wanted more access to the ocean, he proceeded to invade Iran in order to achieve these accomplishments. As 8 years passed by, however, neither Iraq nor Iran had achieved their goals, and with the United Nations increasing pressure and demanding a ceasefire, both countries were forced to comply by signing a resolution ending the war. With the war at an end, Saddam Hussein now had to deal with more problems that had come as a result of the war. Dealing with a debt of over $100 billion and having to rebuild Iraq's infrastructure, he now needed a quick way to find cash. After asking neighboring country Kuwait to help with their debt, and after seeing Kuwait dominate the oil-producing market, Saddam Hussein decided to invade Kuwait. With the world receiving the news of the invasion, the United Nations quickly placed sanctions on Iraq in order to break their economy, forcing them to stop the invasion. Even with the sanctions, however, Iraq would still not leave Kuwait, forcing the United Nations to commence Operation Desert Shield, a significant buildup of military presence at the border between Saudi Arabia, Iraq, and Kuwait. A few months later, Operation Desert Storm would commence with the United States spearheading the operation. The coalition employed the tactic known as shock and awe, where they would shock the enemy by displaying incredible amounts of military power very quickly, destroying the enemy's will and resources to fight back. With the United States' large technological advantage over the Iraqis, Operation Desert Storm concluded just a month later, ending on February 28, 1991. The United States Army, along with support from 38 other countries, was able to end major combat operations in just a month, showing that America's military is the best. With the rising tensions in the world, we've yet to see the United States Armed Forces in any major combat operations. With ongoing/upcoming conflicts like the war in Ukraine, Syrian civil war, or Sudan, there can potentially be conflicts that the US is going to be involved in. If the United States were to get involved in a conflict, then I believe that the United States will still come out on top because of its powerful armed forces, showing that they are the world's top military power.